you all to this important webinar. Now, without wasting much time, now I request Shri Devendra Surana ji, Managing Director, Bhaginagar India Limited, NECM member of FICCI, as well as State Executive Committee member and past Chairperson of FICCI Telangana State Council, to kindly give the welcome remarks.
Thank you, Akhilesh. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome everybody to this webinar on the National Pension System for Corporates. It's a very important, I think, probably the most widely used safety net in the country, PF and NPS. So it will be great to know all the ins and outs of the National Pension System. Today, we are lucky to have with us probably the best possible panel which can brief us about it, and this is possible only because it is offline, online, and we have everybody joining from everywhere. It is my immense pleasure to welcome Shri Supratim Bandopadhyay, the Chairperson of PFRDA, who's joined us today, and thank you for your gracious presence. He has been with the PFRDA for quite some time. Before being the chairman, he was the whole-time member finance with the PFRDA. I would also like to welcome also from PFRDA Mr. Manoj Pukon, Chief General Manager PFRDA, who has also been with PFRDA for the last 10 years. In addition to PFRDA, we are lucky today to have the presence from Mercer, which is the international, probably best known name for this in this area. So we have from Mercer, Preeti Chandrasekhar, the Indian business leader, health and wealth, and fellow actuary, Mercer. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. Looking forward to your valuable guidance on this topic. We also have Sanil Nair, also from Mercer, who has more than 20 years of experience in this field. Thank you for being with us today. To put things in a proper legal and financial perspective, we are lucky to have Behrouz Kamdin, partner, Deloitte Haskins and Sells LLP. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome you all to this very important discussion on the National Pension Scheme. Also with us today is Bhaskar, who is the President of FTCCI, the Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Welcome once again. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us. Looking forward to an excellent webinar on this topic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Surana sir. Now, may I request Sri Bhaskar Reddy Garu, President FTCCI, to kindly address the gatherings.
Thank you, Akhilesh. Mr. Supratim Bandopadhyay, Chairperson, Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority. Mr. Devendra Surana, Chairman FICCI Telangana Chapter, and also our past President FTCCI, and elite panelists present here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share this dais. So, as you all know, the securing retirement is utmost priority for anyone, as it gives them safety, confidence, and stress-free life. So when a person retires without any social benefits like pension, medical insurance, or monthly recurring income to sustain, the day-to-day life becomes extremely difficult for, I think, last generation we used to see.
I think we lost sir there.
Savings are pooled into the pension fund, which is invested by PFRDA, regulated professional fund managers, into diversified portfolios comprising of government bonds, bills, corporate debentures, and shares. So these contributions would grow and accumulate.
I think we lost sir there. Bhaskar sir, yeah. Sir, you're muted, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Huh? Sorry for that. I think somewhere we lost in between with the network connection. So anyway, NPS scheme holds immense value for anyone who works in the private sector and requires a regular pension after retirement. So today's program is extremely useful for employees as well as employees to understand how NPS works and what are the benefits, how much to invest, etc. Because the panelists are very knowledgeable, and PFRDA chairman is also available to clarify all the doubts. I thank the Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority officials for doing this webinar to create awareness on NPS. And I request all the employers to encourage their employees to join NPS and reap the benefit for the secured retirement life. And I wish this webinar a grand success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your address. Now, hello. Yeah. Now, may I request Shri Supratim Bandyopadhyay ji, Chairperson PFRDA, to kindly deliver the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Akhilesh ji, and good afternoon to everybody. Mr. Surana, Mr. Bhaskar Reddy, and all FICCI officials of Telangana chapter present today, and my co-panelists. It's always a pleasure to be associated with FICCI and its different chapters to talk about pension, which is very close to our heart. Whenever we are talking about pension, the first thing that comes to our mind about the demography of the country, how the demography is. Whenever we are talking about India, the same thing that comes to our mind is that we are enjoying a demographic dividend, in the sense that a large proportion of the population, they are still in the working age group. But what is silently and slowly happening, but it is happening, it's a very certain thing that is going to happen, is that India is aging also. Today, we talk to an actuary, talk to insurance companies, they say that the mortality experience is improving. Today for India, a baby which is born today is supposed to live for another close to 70 years. Mortality experience at birth is close to 69.8 years. Few decades back, situation was totally different, but with the improvement in medical sciences, all new treatments are coming, people are becoming more health conscious, maybe they have extra money in their hand to take care of their health. That's why maybe people are living much longer. Now, secondly, what is happening is that if the longevity is increasing, what is the risk today? Risk today is living much longer than expected. And today, at the age of 60, if we look at an average Indian is supposed to live for another 18 to 20 years. That's a long period of time. And are we prepared for that? Prepared for that long journey post our working life, post our retirement? When the paycheck stops, what happens? What Mr. Reddy has rightly pointed out, yes, all other expenses remain. So unless we are prepared from the beginning itself, always there is a possibility that we'll be staring at an uncertain future where we'll be outliving the corpus, whatever small corpus we have accumulated for ourselves. So that's why discussion on pension has become all the more important. If we look at the Indian pension system, or in a broader perspective, we look at the retirement benefit systems which are present in India today, how it looks like. The first institution that comes to our mind is obviously EPFO, Employees Provident Fund Organization, which is there for decades together, and it has crores of members today, about 68-70 lakh pensioners that they enjoy the benefit. Under EPFO, there are basically three kinds of benefits. One is the Provident Fund. Along with that comes a insurance benefit known as employees deposit linked insurance. And the third part is EPS, the employee pension scheme, which was introduced way back in 1995. This is one part of the system. Then there are many other statutory kind of provident funds. Then there are superannuation funds, either managed by insurance companies or the corporates they themselves are managing, self-managed approved superannuation fund. Why approved? In the sense that they get the income tax approval, so that the contribution which comes in, the accumulation, everything becomes tax-free. And lastly, obviously, the NPS system, we are the last of the block. It came into being way back in 2004. It started only with the government employees because at that time, central government thought that the existing old pension scheme, OPS, as they used to call it, it is becoming unsustainable, obviously financially unviable, because it is becoming a large part of the total tax revenue that they are getting is going out in pension payments in the old pension system, because it was an unfunded kind of a system. So they came back into the funded system, which is known as defined contribution system. And thereafter, this NPS was extended to corporates, to individuals, retail customers, and slowly it is now actually extended to everybody. Every Indian citizen today can come and join NPS. Today, if you look at the total labor participation and the total labor force, more than 3/4 of the labor force, either they are casual in nature or they are working in bits and pieces kind of thing. Only maybe 22-23% of the labor force, they have some kind of a regularity in their salary. So how to build a pension system out of this so that people become self-dependent at the later time, at an older age? That is very, very challenging. Of course, Preeti will be talking about it, but I cannot but help in making a quote out of it. There is a most authentic assessment of pension system, that is the Mercer CFA Global Pension Index. The latest 2021, the findings are out. They have looked into the pension system of 43 different jurisdictions, 43 different countries. Out of that, India's standing is a very poorly 40th. Only 3 countries are below us. I believe one will be Argentina, one is Philippines, and the last one is Thailand. There are many indicators that they look into, but I'm talking about 3 broad parameters. One is the adequacy, one is the sustainability, and one is the integrity, these 3 factors. In adequacy, our score, I believe, is the lowest amongst these 43 jurisdictions. It is only 33.5. That shows the kind of pension system that we have, or the kind of retirement benefit systems that we are providing, it is sorely inadequate. Second part is the sustainability. Even whatever we are providing, whether it is sustainable, again, there is a question there. I believe we are getting somewhere around 41. So even if we are paying something, maybe over a period of time, is not sustainable. The same thing which happened to the old pension system. And then they changed over to NPS. And the third part is the integrity, which looks into the regulatory oversight into the entire pension system. How strong is the regulatory oversight? So there we are scoring in 60s. So there we are still better, but we have a long, long way to go. Thirdly, if we look at the total pension ecosystem, as I talked about, what is the total funds that we manage under the entire ecosystem? Today, under NPS, we are managing about 7 lakh crore. Under insurance controlled or managed superannuation funds, it is about another 8.5-9 lakh crore. All taken together, EPFO, everything taken together, it is about 33 trillion rupees that we manage, and which is just about 13-14% of our GDP. When there are countries like Netherlands and all, where their total pension assets is more than twice their GDP. Just imagine the gap that we are running today and the catching up that we have to do in this regard to reach somewhere there. NPS is a system where you decide the adequacy, how much you really want. Now, to talk about what is adequate as pension, there is nothing cast in stone that could be the adequate amount. It varies from person to person. But let us take a moment back and look into the old pension system, how it was designed. Old pension system used to give 50% of the replacement ratio, which is nothing but the last drawn salary as pension. So if you think that 50% is good enough for me, what today the current system is providing. Whenever a new person is joining service, normally what they are given are two mandatory benefits. One is gratuity, obviously, because it comes under the Payment of Gratuity Act, and the Provident Fund, because most of the employers, they are registered with the EPFO, and they give this benefit maybe 12% each from the employer side and 12% from the employee side. And the new employees who join, unless they are told that this may not be adequate, they feel a false sense of security that this will see me through. We made a small calculation, and young person joining at the age of say 25 years at a salary of 30,000 kind of rupees, and every year sees a salary hike of 8% and taking inflation at 5%, where does he or she reaches in terms of net replacement ratio at the age of 60? With these two mandatory benefits, no way the net replacement ratio is going to be more than 30%. It will be more closer to 25%. So is that enough? Obviously, it is not. Because this lifestyle that we built up over maybe 3 decades or more, it's very difficult to give away those lifestyles. And at the older age, what happens, certain costs will be added, even if you don't wish to have it. These are medical costs. And we have seen during the pandemic also, the kind of inflation that we have seen in medical costs today, the medical treatments. Yes, everything is available, but everything is available at a huge cost. Are you ready for that? So the best way today to be protected is to start early, as they call, catch them young. I was looking at the data, very interesting data, is that next 2 years, Indian IT industry is going to recruit 1.35 million new graduates. And as we know, IT over the years have been probably the biggest job giver in this country. So can we take a target that all these people, or maybe say 50% of these people, will be brought under some kind of a retirement benefit scheme, which is what and where they will be able to manage their lifestyle, manage their expenses post their retirement, and they can live a life of dignity. How to do it? So the best way, as we have seen, that whichever industry things have really gone well, is that they start when these people join. And they tell them that apart from maybe PF and gratuity also, there is some other benefit, which is maybe NPS, which is maybe, I'm not telling that NPS is the solution for every problem. It's not so. But it is definitely one of the solutions. One of the solutions, and it will provide a great sense of security when a person joins and really retires. Because as I said, the adequacy is in your hand. Because as you contribute, the contribution is very, very flexible. You need not contribute at the same level every year. It's not like an insurance contribution, that once you get into an insurance, your contribution every year or every quarter or every month is fixed. You cannot say today I do not have adequate cash flow. So instead of a premium of 300 rupees, let me pay 150 rupees, that balance 150 I'll pay at a later point of time. There is no such leeway. But here, if you are not capable of paying adequate amount, you just can keep the account alive by paying 1,000 rupees a year. And thereafter, when you have enough money in your kitty, you can contribute. There is an optional account called Tier 2. Of course, there is no tax benefit, but you can run it parallelly with your pension account, which is Tier 1. And whenever you are in need of money, you can dip into your Tier 2, take out the money, and you have early access to that fund at any point of time. Yes, Tier 1 will build your pension corpus, and as year goes by, you look at your accumulation, you can decide for next year what you have to really do. If it is coming from the employers, contribution is also coming from the employers, it is sustainable in the sense that employer knows exactly how much I have to shell out towards the NPS contribution. If you are paying say 10%, you know this is my total salary bill and 10% comes to this much. So there is nothing uncertain about it. And so far as the integrity part is concerned, it is totally and well managed and regulated by Pfrda. All the intermediaries which are working under Pfrda, be it fund managers, be it record keepers, be it the the trustee bank, everybody is well regulated to ensure, and whatever changes we are bringing into the system, first focus is always on the customer. What kind of customer benefit I can bring here on the table? We have rationalized the benefits given to different intermediaries, but they are also, we have seen to it that the overall cost structure remains possibly, if you look at the overall cost structure of NPS, possibly this is the lowest cost financial product available in the country today. Compare it with insurance funds, compare it with mutual funds, you will see the difference for yourself. So through this forum, once again, we appeal to the employers, please talk to your employees when they join you at the initial stage itself, when they are still young, and tell them there is one more option available. It is not only for the tax benefit that NPS brings into the play. Apart from that, beyond tax benefit also, let them look into the actual pensionary benefit that it will bring in. And today they may not realize it, but normally, as we have seen in our experience, people realize it when it is too late, maybe in their mid 40s or early 50s, by the time it is too late. So that's why let us start early. Let employers also work as guide and mentors and educators for this young generation, and they are capable of creating a corpus, a cash pot for them, which will see them through during their retired life. And today we are talking about 18 to 20 years. When these youngsters, they retire, maybe they will be looking at another 25 years of long and arduous journey. And unless they are prepared for it and they start today, I believe it will be very, very difficult for them to pass those years. And with the joint family system totally broken down today, there is no joint family system to talk about. So everybody has to be on his or her own. Pfrda is there to help you out. And if any of the employers, they want to introduce NPS into their system, will be too happy to help you out. Today, more than 9,800 employers have already joined us. But if you look at the take-up rate, it's very low. Only 13 lakh employees from corporate sector they have joined. So it's a very low number. So how do we penetrate more? That has been our endeavor. And I believe these kind of forums that FICCI, CII, and all industrial bodies are today giving to us, we are really thankful to you for giving this kind of platforms through which we can educate the people, come to the employers and tell them what NPS is and how it can really make a change in the life of millions and millions of people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving insights on the the importance of NPS scheme, and how huge the gap is between people who have registered and then so many people are who can subscribe to NPS as well. There's a huge potential as such. Now, may I request Ms. Preeti Chandrasekhar, India Business Leader, Health and Wealth, and Fellow Actuary Mercer, to give a presentation on retirement benefits planning. Over to you, ma'am.
Very good, all of you, and special thanks to Kyc Requirements for us this opportunity to be a knowledge partner on a subject that is perhaps one of the most relevant ones in the current day and age. I think the previous session gave us was a wake-up call of sorts, and there were a lot of key takeaways that at least I had from the session when the chairman sir talked about increased longevity in hands-on healthcare, high growth with high inflation. Another piece of statistic is about, we're going to likely touch 194 million in 2031 from a 138 million in 2020, in 994 million in 2031 from a 138 million in 2021. And given this fact and the fact that we are perhaps going to live longer, at age 60, we'll be expected to live another 20 years, yet we realize that very few of us are actually thinking about retirement in some sense. So how the younger generation keeps postponing thinking about creating a retirement corp. Say that pension is a decision for now and really cannot be deferred. And in the next few slides, we will be talking a bit about some research that Mercer has done globally on the entire retirement landscape and longevity and the need for saving for retirement, followed by Sunil's slides where he will be talking about something which is very, very specific from an employer standpoint. If you move on to the next slide, please. Three things that we will be discussing today are, what is the issue that we're discussing? A lot of it was already touched upon in the previous session. We'll see why is this happening? And then, okay, if all that is there, then what's next? So these are the three ways in which we'll be covering the topic. Move on to the next one. And the next one. Yes, thank you. So the first, we start with the what. We all know we are going to be living longer. Aging is a reality. As we talked about it before, life expectancy at the age of 60 is going to be 80. So another 20 years for all of us to live. And including the social security and private sector arrangements are really under a lot of pressure now than ever before. Most of the countries have moved from a defined contribution system. And as Chairman Sir rightly pointed out, we saw government and many of the public sector undertakings also moved away from a defined benefit, final salary pension to a defined contribution arrangement, which means that the pressure on the individual has increased tremendously. Recent low-level interest rates across the world have also particularly, really affected the DC arrangements. In India, if we see that, we thought that we had something called a, which is not true anymore now, because it is expected that the elderly population in India, which is 60 and above, is projected to increase to a whopping 41% from 2021 to 2031. And this clearly is not something which we can actually sit and just look at and read about and do nothing about it. But having said that, we also realize that the pension systems around the world, including many other countries, is also under the same kind of pressure. You're seeing significant aging of the populations, low growth, low interest rate conditions, lack of easy access to pension plans for some workers in both the developed and developing countries, etc., have really sort of made the topic extremely important to us. And so this, as I said earlier, this topic is pertinent, and we're really happy to be sharing some of our thoughts. The idea is not to scare people, but just idea is to just sort of make people sit up and take some action about it. We move on to the next slide. Yeah. So this particular aspect, Chairman Sir already talked about. I'm talking about the Mercer Global Pension Index, which is an index which is published every year. We are below many other countries. Actually, from the bottom, we are fourth because there are only countries below us. But having said that, I would just like to highlight one thing that I know we would have loved to be really at the top, but we realized that we don't have social security system in India. So for the most part, except for the poorer sections, we have to take care of ourselves. This is one thing. And the second thing is there is very, very low coverage under private pension arrangement. It's just about 6%. And all of us love flexibility. All of us love to, have more choice in where we invest, when do we withdraw, what do we do with that money, not realizing that flexibility also has to be accompanied by a certain amount of responsibility. So all this put together implies that the current system, while we can talk about the inadequacy of the current system, there's very little that all of us are also doing about personal retirement. And that in some sense affects the way the index values come about. We move on to the next. Now here we talk about another perspective where this is another piece of data where we've done research at the World Economic Forum. And we see in this particular graph that, if you look at the shortfall in pension savings through retirement savings gap, we look at India and China being the fastest growing at the gap of 10% and 7% respectively. And what are the drivers for this? Again, rapidly aging populations. I talked about a little bit of statistics there. Labor force in the unorganized sector. This is also another perspective where in India, we have estimated about 90% plus of the workforce is in the unorganized sector. And there is very little that we have in terms of savings in the unorganized sector, though we are hoping that the new labor reforms that have got sort of announced, and when they get implemented, it will give an impetus to some kind of a social security for the unorganized sector also. Then there's a growing middle class. We have improved the quality of life, but is that good enough for us? We do not know. I mean, is the retirement income good enough for us? We do not know. We move on to the next slide. This is another statistic from our own country. We look at the sort of the balance sheet of a typical Indian household. Asset side, it's a no-brainer that most of our assets are in gold and real estate. And there is clear underinvestment in long-term insurance and pension products. On the liability side, we are seeing that some of the issues will really, really compound or become extremely pertinent and very serious as the elderly cohort grows. So clearly, there's something that we need to do about. Next slide, please. Couple of slides on what we should be doing. What happens to our earnings while we are on the job. If you see all these forces that you see in the slide in front of you, there is too much competition for the rupee that I earn in terms of spending. Where do you put? Do you put it in a savings for a house? Do you put it towards the holiday that you always wanted, Bali or somewhere else in the world? Do you put it towards retirement savings, or do you put it towards eating? The retirement savings, all the others, you just, the immediate need for them are so strongly felt that retirement savings is sort of takes a back seat. Now, what happens if you move on to the next slide, you'll see what happens to our earnings when we're not in gainful employment. For the same rupee that I get from my retirement income, the competition is in terms of maybe not a mortgage, you would have repaid your loan, but still for the holiday, medical expenses, as Chairman Sir rightly said, medical inflation is clearly a double digit as of now. You know, that's like being very prudent also, it is a double digit for sure. Or maybe an optimistic also, it's a double digit. I still need to eat. And God forbid, if I do need home care, I still need to pay for it. So if you see from the previous slide to the next slide, if you ignore the retirement saving portion, what happens is the money that you get from retirement income becomes that less, yet still you have all the expenses still competing for the retirement income. We move on to the next slide. Now looking at it from an employee perspective, Chairman Sir also said that they've done a bit of a math, and Sir, I think what we have on this slide is perhaps very closely correlated to what you talked about. That if you think that you get a nice sum in gratuity and provident fund, that's hardly sufficient for you to really be able to have a sufficient retirement income and live a comfortable life post-retirement. And you would want at least 70% of your pre-retirement income to be replaced by a retirement income. So in that sense, there's clearly a big gap. And having said that, now what next? You know, so we realize that clearly we've spent so much of time and so much of our active life in the workplace that is there something that the employer can do about it? Is there something that we can at our workplace do something for our employees? Is what Sanil would talk about in the next few slides. Over to you, Sanil.
Thank you, Preeti. Greetings to Chairman Sir, PFRA team, Mr. Surana, Vicky team and participants. While Preeti gave some interesting insights and statistics on global and India retirement landscape based on our study and surveys, I will cover following slides on employer-employee perspective and their preferences. So this slide, so what drives an employee to choose kind of an organization he or she would like to work or get associated with? So as you can see, individuals prefer to work for an organization that has some responsible rewards, a company that ensures fair pay, ethical wages in the supply chain and pay equity, protects employees' overall well-being, be it physical, psychological or financial, strong purpose, strong vision, strong mission, that the goal should be very clear for the organization. And of course, an organization which have concern for the environment. So these are the top four brackets where an employee looks for. Globally, employees' number one preference for an organization they want to work with is one that delivers on responsible rewards. As I mentioned, a company which ensures a fair pay and equity. With when you see on the left-hand side, 78% of the HR expects wage stagnation to continue, and increasing focus on the income gap between the rich and poor, and that will continue. So what employees want around financial well-being? You see 89% look for options for saving and investments, and good 87% perceive financial wellness education as an important requirement. But the question is, are we really doing it? So on the right side talks about how can HR offer other rewards, and how many are actually doing that today. So numbers are a little different. So if you see, only 29% provide financial education to their employees, 26% subsidize health insurance policies, and the final stat, which is 11%, are for the companies how they can correct the underlying causes of pay inequities. So yet this is not an area to be overlooked. It's an important point. As we see, only top 44% of the employees believe they work for a company that ensures equity in pay or promotion decisions. So moving forward on responsible rewards, consider your entire ecosystem, focus on financial well-being, and make progress on pay equity. Next slide, please. Why do employees join, stay, or leave an organization? Right. So 1 in 3 employees today believe that artificial intelligence or automation will replace their job in next few years' time, depending on the kind of function they are into. So it's no surprise that job security comes out on top again as the main reason for employees to join and stay. But we do see some changes other than that, which are quite dramatic. Notably, there's a swap between work-life balance, which is down this year, and with reskilling and career development. Clearly, employees are feeling the need to reinvent themselves at the pace of organizational restructuring. Competitive pay continues to be the top reason for people to leave, along with doing some interesting work, which could add value to their overall development. And the influence of the manager on why they should stay or go had actually come down. However, this is an opinion data, not actual behavior, but I think it speaks of the changing times. Next slide, please. Today's employer understand just increasing compensation alone does not ensure financial wellness for their employees. It has to be beyond that. They are keen to know what are the top concerns of their employees with regard to financial wellness. How can they save better for the future, post meeting their expenses and liabilities? Employees are aware of the fact that poor financial health does have a direct impact on the employee productivity and overall health of an employee. Hence, there's a strong need for educate financial wellness program that includes retirement planning. Next slide, please. This slide will give you an employee perspective with regard to the overall retirement benefits and planning. What is shown is different generation of employees working together, but each with their own mindset of saving and retirement planning. For example, a younger lot, they earn well, they would rather enjoy the present, spends a lot of time on the luxury items, but saving for future does take a back seat. Hence, perceived value of retirement benefit is quite low. Just opposite, for a middle-aged and older person, retirement saving or a sustainable standard of living post-retirement becomes one of the priority. As age goes by, the concern for post-retirement income is always ticking at the back of your mind. Whereas from an employer perspective, we have seen what they look for is minimum administrative burden and fiduciary responsibility when they look forward to implement or even evaluate any retirement program within the company. They would always like to play conservative without too much risk on the investment of their employees. Employers also believe high and better the employee engagement is, higher is the success of any such plan. They are conscious of the fact that each age group have different priorities and their attitude to save for future differs accordingly. Hence, taking everyone together on this journey does become a challenge. On the right side of the slide, you see what employees' priorities are when they choose such a plan, a retirement plan. They look for flexibility, simplicity, higher returns, overall holistic approach to financial wellness, and not just taking one kind of a product or an investment. Next slide, please. So what will work well? How can employer help? What challenges they face? Let's talk about that. Today, from an Indian pension perspective, Preeti also picked up this point that organizations offer superannuation and NPS. Some offer either one of them or both. However, now more and more companies are moving towards NPS. We have seen NPSs from last few years being steadily become very popular in corporate model. And the take-up rate, however, the take-up rate still remains a challenge. Reason being, we know it's a voluntary pension program. So engaging everyone, all employees, all employee categories could be challenging. Topics related to financial wellness does not excite all age groups. We have also seen doing an education session alone on retirement planning for employees does not prove to be very effective. So the important question is what will make a difference? Based on our own experience, because we as consultant, Mercer as a consulting firm also approached a lot of organizations for supporting them in corporate NPS implementation. We feel effective communication and personalized approach has a positive impact and result in higher engagement. So today we all agree NPS is a product which with some appealing features, flexibilities, tax benefits, and to top it, very strong return consistently for year on year. Not many you will find in the market today, which is giving a double-digit return from consistently, right? So that talks about the overall structure, how the fund is being managed. It needs to be important. It needs to be well communicated to the employees to make them understand the concept of retirement. Next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit more about the challenges of both stakeholders. Here we are referring to the employer and employee part. To start with the employer, most of the multinational companies, a global buy-in is very imperative before they launch any local plan in India. So we have seen global leadership would like to first be convinced with the plan before local teams take over. So this gap, sometimes there is a disconnect and end up in time-consuming process, and to the extent the decision itself get deferred to a later stage. Third-party payroll, like most of the organization engage with a third-party payroll provider, and that's another factor or challenge for employers as their system, the payroll system, needs to be well equipped to take NPS as another component. So any delay in the system on that front will also delay the entire launch. Employee engagement and internal operational support are important tick in the box to decide for any such implementation. But for employees, I think it's more about psychological also. Employees are at different levels of well-being. Their responses to company initiatives are very different. Someone would still be attracted to a luxury watch or iPhone, but say retirement saving could take a back seat. So priorities are very different. Another common issue, employees are really unsure when to start saving. So how much to save? What is the ideal time? They sometimes do have the intent to save, but when is undecided, and rather decision to invest gets deferred every time. So it's fair to say a lack or inadequate financial literacy is a big challenge today. We also feel right balance between employee expenses and savings, another issue employees face. And this imbalance would further result in no or inadequate retirement planning. Next slide, please. We come to the final slide and an important slide here. What will ensure success of NPS program in an organization? We all know take-up rate is the proof of the pudding. So what needs to be done? As mentioned in the earlier slide, an effective and a personalized employee communication will make a difference to increase the percentage. Right partner is very important. NPS is a program with different intermediaries, and one of the important intermediaries is the POP, the point of presence. So, and if a POP is efficient and ensures smooth and timely account opening, grievance handling, it really satisfies the employee, and the entire program spreads by the word of mouth within the organization. To ensure a successful NPS program, a company should also ensure regular engagement with the employees, or not to treat this entire implementation as a one-time program. This is an ongoing exercise. So the employee needs to be mindful of that. So it's important to understand the intention and action intention gap, as we discussed earlier, when to help employees to invest at the right time. Finally, the management plays a very important role. I think the company leadership should lead by example. They should be convinced on the program, enrolled in the program, and further convince employees on the relevance of retirement planning. A strong nudge from employer will go a long way in ensuring employee financial stability. That brings the end to my session. Many thanks for the patient hearing. Mono sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Yes.
Okay.
Akhilesh, can I start?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I was on mute. I was going on talking. Thank you, Preeti ma'am and Sanil, for the excellent presentation. Given in detail, about retirement benefits as such. Now, may I request Ms. Mono Pukon, Chief General Manager, Pfrda, to give the presentation on NPS again, please. Over to you, Mr. Mono.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just like to highlight on the product features. I'll make it brief, and basically just highlight on the points or the advantages of NPS, or into the not going into under the nitty-gritty and details. Just give you an overview how advantageous it is, what the scheme is all about. So to start with, just going with the features of NPS, what makes it so special? So it is first and foremost is that the pension account is unique we call it as a permanent retirement account number. The account number remains constant, and individual can be allotted only once unless he closes the account, and this account is transferable across employment. Even if he changes job, the number can be given to the new employer and it can be continued. You need not open a new account, and a person cannot have two accounts at the same point of time, and it can be maintained without an employer and with an employer, both. The number can be transferred accordingly. If somebody wants to start his own venture, you can continue with that same account number. And if he wants to get tagged to an employer, maybe a government or maybe a private or maybe an international body, we allow it to get continued if he's an Indian citizen with the same number, because he goes on contributing towards this account during the entire working life and the number remains the same. The next is about the cost. It is not the lowest cost pension scheme around in India, but across the globe. In fact, the cost benefit is that the low cost benefit derived by the subscriber is that it doesn't eat away the corpus. Basically, it helps in building you a larger corpus or retirement corpus at the end of your working life. There are a lot of choices, flexible choices. I'm talking about pension fund choices, asset allocation choices, your annuity choices. So we offer a lot of choices to the subscriber at the point of his accumulation phase and at the point of decumulation phase also. Returns, I have a slide on this. We say that the NPS fund managers or the pension fund managers have been able to deliver competitive returns comparable to other investments options that are available. Tax efficient, I think Madam Behrouz will be taking in detail. I'll just highlight that there are a lot of advantages of joining the scheme for making contributions both to the employer and the employer, and at the point of exit also, it can be a triple E. It's almost a triple E kind of a product. Transparency and access, I want to say that all the transactions can be traced 24/7 because we offer a web login, a mobile app login, and the subscriber can have access and transact business or transact in his account at any point of time. And over and above, it is regulated by Pfrda because the entities working in the entire architecture or in the system are regulated by us. They are offered registration by us, and they work according to the rules and guidelines that have been given to us, and these are monitored by Pfrda. So when I'm talking about a pension account, it is a Tier 1 account. We have two nomenclatures, Tier 1 and Tier 2. The pension account is the Tier 1 account, which has all the tax benefits. There are certain restrictions on withdrawal. We allow partial withdrawals only after 3 years, and that to 25% of his own contributions. And the minimum amount required for opening the account is only 500, and in an annual contribution is 1,000 rupees, and there is no limit on the number of contributions or in the amount of contributions. The Tier 2 is an optional account. After opening a Tier 1, or you can be opened simultaneously. The Tier 2 is optional. It can be opened or need not be opened. If it's open, it can be opened with a minimum contribution of 1,000, and the minimum subsequent contribution is 250. The only benefit of having a Tier 2, can be withdrawn any point of time. And the drawback is that it doesn't have any tax benefits like the Tier 1. All the gains that would be arising out of it at the point of withdrawal would be taxed at the marginal rate, except for central government employees, where we have a Tier 2 scheme for central government employees, wherein if the contributions are locked in for 3 years, they get the benefit of under Section 80C for the contributions being made. Here also, there is no limit on the number of contributions or the amount of contribution. It can be used more of a savings account, which delivering higher return. So this slides I have broken up into 3 parts: entry, accumulation, and the exit part. So entry, we mean joining the scheme. The conditions that we have kept is that it should be the subscriber should be an individual, should be a citizen of India, resident, non-resident, or overseas citizen, aged between 18 to 70 years. KYC requirements are there, like photograph, address proof, and identity proof. PAN is mandatory, and it can be opened online through Aadhaar authentication, that is paperless, or with a PAN and a bank verification, which is paperless, or submission of a physical form to the 93 points of presence or distribution channels that we have, and they have branches of more than around 85,000. So these forms can also be deposited in any of these outlets across India. So after joining with a minimum of 500 rupees, or it can be higher amount, the minimum is 500. The subscriber contribution, the contribution can flow from either the employee or the employer. If there is no tagging of the employer, then it can be given by them. If it has tagging also, then also the contribution can come either of them, employer or the employer. And there is another option to both of the employer and the employer to contribute, but the proportion of the contributions may be equal or unequal. So the flexibilities may build up on how the contributions will flow, either from the employee or the employer or from both. So this is an unique thing that is, and the tax benefits also will be are there accordingly for those contributions. And once these contributions are made, it flows to the pension funds, and these are invested as per the investment guidelines. And the fund managers declare an NAV at the end of the day. And the record keeper, what they do is that they keep record of all the contributions that are coming into, and these are unitized. Unitized means what happens, the contributions are converted into units at the NAV declared by the pension funds. So what reflects in the pension account is the number of units outstanding or the number of units that are balanced in that account. And the day and the value of those units will be varying as per the NAV declared by the fund manager. So whenever contributions come in, the units will go up, and the value of those units will be reflected multiplying by the net asset value declared by the fund manager. So as and when contributions comes in, the corpus would be growing over a period of time till the point of maturity. So maturity means exiting the scheme. We say that premature exit means you can exit the scheme only after 5 years. There is a lock-in period. And this amendment has been come recently. Previously it was 10 years. So recently we have modified it and amended it, bringing down to 5 years. And in that case, we say it before 60 years. If somebody wants to go out of the scheme after 5 years, we allow. So 80% of the corpus has to be annuitized. That means used for purchasing an annuity plan, and only 20% will be paid as lump sum. At the age of 60 or superannuation age, a subscriber reaching the superannuation age of 58, 60 or 62 or 58, whatever the employer says, we say that only 40% of the corpus has to be used for buying an annuity plan, and 60% is paid as a lump sum. And if the corpus is less than 5 lakhs, then the entire amount is paid in full. And in the premature exit also, if the corpus is less than 2.5 lakhs, the entire corpus is paid. And in case of unfortunate death, 100% of the corpus is paid to the nominee. Nominee also has an option to buy annuity from this NPS. The benefit of purchasing annuity from NPS is that it is exempt from GST, so you get a higher annuity amount from the insurer. So annuity, as I told you, it's being offered by the insurance companies, which are empaneled with us. Currently, 14 of them have been empaneled with us. All the leading insurance companies with us, they offer different annuity plans, and the subscriber needs to choose any one of the insurance company or the annuity service provider, and thereafter choose a plan. So the 40% that minimum that is required will flow to any one of this, and pensions will come or will be received from this annuity service provider by the subscriber. So coming to choices, again, apart from that, that is the annuity service provider at the point of exit, but at the point of entry also, there are certain choices that to be made about the record keeper. We have 3 record keepers who unitizes, it keeps tracks of all your personal details and the units or the contributions that are coming into the pension account. So we have NSDL, KFintech, and CAMS. CAMS is to be operationalized, I think, in this next month. And the next choice is about the fund managers. We have 7 pension funds, and only one has to be chosen at this point of time. But we can, I think, there's a change. We can go in for 3 maximum at a certain point of time, which will be coming in the week or something, within a month or within 15 days in a fortnight. That change will come in. So here what happens is that the subscriber needs to choose the fund manager with whom the contributions, through whom the contributions would be invested. And this choice can be changed once in a year. So the next choice is about how the contributions will be allocated among the different asset classes that we have. So we offer 4 asset classes: equity, corporate bonds, government securities, and alternate assets. We have kept a limit on the amount of contributions that can flow to equity, 75%. So otherwise it is 100% for corporate bonds and government securities. The entire contributions can go towards this asset class. And for alternate assets, which is a newer class of asset regarding InvITs, REITs and all, so we have kept a restriction of 5%. So this can also be changed twice in a year, but going forward, it will be 4 times in a year. So this is called an active choice when a subscriber selects what proportion of his contributions should go to which asset classes among these 4. So we call it as an active choice. If the subscriber is not financially literate or is not much aware of the finance of the markets and the instruments that are being purchased, he can go in for a auto choice. Auto choice is that the contributions will be divided in a predetermined proportion between government securities, corporate bonds, and equity. So we have 3 auto choices: aggressive, that is LC 75, life cycle 75, a moderate, LC 50, life cycle 50, and a conservative one, life cycle 25. What we mean by 75, 50, and 25 is the proportion of equity exposure that the contributions or the investments that the subscriber wants to take according to his risk appetite. So 75 in the aggressive one, 75% is the equity exposure and 25% in debt. That is 15% in corporate bonds and 10% in corporate bonds and 15% in government securities. So this proportion, predetermined proportion, remains fixed up to the age of 35. We say that the minimum age of joining is 18. So anybody joining between that period and choosing any of the life cycle, the proportion of the contributions going towards each asset classes is fixed, predetermined according to this proportion till the age of 35. On the 36th birthday, what happens is that equity proportion goes on reducing. In an aggressive, it reduces by 4%. In a conservative LC50, it reduces by 2%, and in the conservative one, it reduces by 1%, and the debt proportion goes up increasing, and this goes on continuing till the age of 55. So an aggressive fund will have only 15% equity, a moderate life cycle will have 10%, and the conservative will have 5% till 60 years of age going forward. But we say that the account can be continued to 75 years. So 55 going forward, the proportion will remain unchanged from 15, 10, and 5% of equity. And this also can be changed 4 times in a year going forward, but right now it is 2 times. So returns, as I've told you on my first slide, that it offers, fund managers has been able to offer attractive returns. What I meant was that this is the average returns of all the 7 fund managers for the different asset classes. So equity over a period of 12 years, this is CAGR 13.15, corporate bonds 9.70, government securities 9.14. Central government and state government schemes are hybrid schemes or a composite scheme. It consists of equity exposure of 15% maximum, that's 14 to 15 it usually remains, and corporate bonds of 30 to 35%, and government securities around 50%. So here also the composite return is 9.8% and 9.68%, but the longest tenure that we have on the historical return is of 13 years on the central government scale of 9.8% returns. Just to give you a glimpse of the amount of corpus that PFRDA supervises at this point of time and the number of subscribers that is there into the system. So we have around nearly around 5 crores of subscribers and a corpus of 7,05,000 crores. And majority of the subscribers, if you see, it comes from the government sponsored scheme of Atal Pension Yojana and NPS Light, which is almost around 3 crores 80 lakhs. In central and state governments, we have around 76 lakhs of subscribers, and in the corporate sector, we have around 33 lakhs 70,000, around 34 lakhs of subscribers which are come voluntarily and join the scheme. So accordingly, also the corpus is unevenly distributed. In the government sector, we have around 5,66,000 crores. In the government sponsored schemes of NPS and Atal Pension Yojana, 25,000 crores. In the voluntary segment, that is the corporate segment, we have around 9,800 corporates roughly joining in with 13.5 lakhs of subscribers. The corpus is around 84,000 crores. And individuals joining voluntarily to the scheme without an employer, it is around 30,000 crores. And we have around 20 lakhs of subscribers joining the scheme. So next about transparency and accessibility, as I told, we have a mobile app and we have offer a web login also. So the web login, the username is the account number and the password can be generated online also if through the mobile OTP. So it is given to the subscriber in the while opening the account as a welcome kit. But if somebody misses it out, he can generate online also. And similarly, the mobile app also the same thing. You have a user ID as the account number and the password also can be generated. So here you can have access to your account 24/7. You can transact, you can change the fund managers, you can contribute, you can change your asset allocation, you can give withdrawal requests. So all transactions can also be done on the online platforms of the web and the mobile app. So lastly, I just want to highlight on the grievance redressal that we have set it up. We have a special, we have notified the regulations. We have set out the timelines of if somebody of the subscriber having any grievance in the system, how it travels through the entire architecture, how it should be resolved, and what are the timelines. So if a subscriber has any grievance, he can raise it through an online. We have a central grievance redressal mechanism that's an online platform. It can be filled in online and token number will be generated online. It can be given email, physical letters. So we are captured through all modes. And we require 30 days is the resolution time for the intermediary to resolve the issue. And if it's the resolution provided is not satisfactory, or if it's not very convincing, we have an escalation matrix after that also. So the next level of escalation is the NPS trust. And after that also we have ombudsman and then the authority. So there are 4 levels of escalation. In fact, after this also, if the authority's resolution is not satisfactory or it's not convinced, then it can be appealed in the Securities Appellate Tribunal. So thank you, and we'll be open for questions at the end of the session. Thank you, and over to Akhilesh.
Thank you, Mr. Fukan. Thank you for the detailed presentation on Tier 1 and Tier 2 options that the subscriber has. Now we move on to Ms. Behrouz Kamdin, partner Deloitte Haskins, to talk about the tax implications. Over to you, Ms. Behrouz.
Thank you. Thank you, Akhilesh. Thank you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, for giving us this opportunity to speak along with you and Sanil and Priti and Mono on this very important topic. Thank you, Vicky, for organizing this and giving us an opportunity. I wish to apologize. I think my network today is not proper, and I've been trying to see how best I can resolve it. I've got 2 home network and the dongle, but both seems to be giving trouble today. So I'm very sorry if you're not able to hear me well. May I request Mono to please share the presentation? We have a very small presentation on this. And I think Mr. Bandyopadhyay, Priti, Mono all have spoken about NPS and pension. I think pension per se is very important for any individual. One, it actually helps, and I have been a beneficiary of pension. Unfortunately, at a very young age, my father was not there, so, and the organization was good that we had provident fund, gratuity, and pension. So it was all of that was saved, and then we could earn, get the income from it. So I think pension as a saving product is extremely important. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Behrouz, we are able to hear you. Yeah.
Hello.
We are able to hear you, Behrouz.
Okay. So pension, sure, thank you. Pension as a saving product is an extremely important product. And it's one of the saving products. The way we do savings and mutual fund, do share fixed deposits, saving insurance, investment product that is saving product. NPS is one of the good saving products that we have today. You have to take care of the risk which is attached to it, and that has to be considered whenever a return on investment has to be looked in. So we will be discussing tax incentives. Basically, whenever we make an investment in any product, we look at what is the net of tax return that we earn. Because if I get a return and then there's tax on that amount and it's going to be paid, then I have to look at the net of tax. Cash jo mere ko milta hai, that is very important. So what is my net of tax benefit on any investment that we do? We can go to the next slide, please. So today, what we're going to discuss is basically to say, what are the incentives that have been given for NPS? Next is, what are the changes which have been made in the law? Can we? Yeah. And the changes, because there are certain changes which have happened. Retirement benefits was something which was encouraged by the government over the years. But now a lot of things have been changing on that. So basically, when we look at retirement planning and we look at tax, we look at 4 phases of it. What is the tax advantage when the employee or the individual contributes to it? What are tax advantages when the employer contributes? What happens to the accretal which happens on this amount which I've invested over the years? See, this is long term. I have to keep it for long term. Whatever income accrues on it, what is the tax implication of that? And on maturity, what is the tax implication? So anyone who looks at retirement planning has to look into all these 4 aspects to see which best to invest in. Provident fund, by default, people have been investing, and it's a good product. It is a very good product. It is actually nice to have a provident fund, but that alone is not sufficient. And I can speak from experience that just provident fund is not sufficient. Just getting gratuity and provident fund also is not sufficient. Even getting the pension amount, which was under the old scheme, was not sufficient, because you live much longer than what you are expecting. And PPF, you also have public provident fund, which also is a good scheme which government has come out with for retirements, but that also is not sufficient. If you look at the entire gamut, you need to look at also NPS, and I myself have contributed to NPS now. Though started late, but I have done it. And NPS is one very unique feature which I can share, because where I started my job in my the first job which I started, that organization, it was a chartered accountancy firm, but they had a private pension fund at that point of time in those years. And the requirement there was that you need to work for 10 years to be eligible for pension at the age of 60. I worked for 8 years and I left because of my family, and I was not eligible for pension. So the entire contribution which was being made has lapsed. So 8 years contribution got lapsed. If you compare that with an NPS, NPS is very good because the account stays with the individual. So even when you move jobs or you quit from a particular job, you can continue with your account. So you keep moving, and you can do it. I think that's something we discussing. If we go to the next slide, next slide is a little bit very verbose build up, but we try to put everything into one. Basically, so into the employee's contribution. We are able to see the next slide. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we are able to hear you. It's clear.
So I will continue with the next NPS. So when an individual invests, and NPS has this very other peculiar thing which other private pension funds don't have. They were all linked to employment. So if I'm employed, I can have a PF, provident fund, I can have gratuity, I can be part of the pension scheme which is there, the private pension schemes. Yeah. But if it is NPS, as an individual also, I can have an NPS account. It doesn't have to be linked to my employment. If it is linked to my employment, you get additional tax benefits. But as an individual also, I can do it. So when I contribute as an individual, up to 20% of the gross total income, I can get a deduction under ATCCD. If I'm an employee, then up to 10% of the income I get as a deduction under ATCCD. And this is within the aggregate limit. Of course, the aggregate limit still stands at 1,50,000. So whatever you've contributed, your PF, your insurance premiums that you have, so all of that is linked together, and it's 1,50,000 is the limit, which is there, the overall limit. But NPS has an additional exclusivity of additional 50,000 deduction. Now, I think this is very important. Agar aap dekhoge, 50,000 you invest, minimum, that's the minimum. You will immediately get a tax benefit out of it. And the tax benefit can be depending on your slab. Like we said, you have to look at your rate of return. It can be up to 34%. Around 34% of 50,000, you get immediate tax benefit when you contribute additional amount to NPS. And this is an additional deduction. It is over and above the limit of 1,50,000. So clearly, NPS government has been incentivizing to say that you invest in long-term retirement plans, and they've given additional benefit to NPS of 50,000 rupees. Now, there are 2 schemes. The earlier government used to always encourage people to save, and Indians by nature have been saving in it. So when you save, they were used to giving a tax benefits to it. You get a deduction. They have come out with a new scheme, new tax regime, which says that don't claim those deductions and we will reduce the rate. So the rate of tax gets reduced, but you don't claim deductions at all. And you don't get ATC, ATCCC, all of that you will not get. You will not get a lot other benefits also, which as an employee you have to get. You go under lower rate of tax. Much more simpler way to order. But what we've seen is that generally, if you're seeing a higher bracket and you are not really benefiting those. So reduction is going to be higher. If you deduct 50,000. Employers' contribution, and I think this is the most important tax employers have missed. Now have cost to employer contribution. When you do, the entire employer contribution is part of your employer. It's part of salary. It's already been provided in the act itself. So section 17(1), it is already covered. Employers contribute NPS is part of salary, but you get deduction of the entire amount which has been contributed if it is less than 10% of the salary. So generally employers will contribute 1% of salary. You get a full deduction. If you're an employee, you get 14 of your as a deduction. So to that extent, if you look at it, in one place it gets taxed, but you get a full deduction for it. So therefore, there's no tax contribution. Therefore, the budget of in the Finance Act of 2020. So basically, what happens is employer, you're looking at which you need to take care of. If you're within the limit of 10%, and you're also within the limit of 7,50,000, which we'll discuss later, then you're actually getting some benefit of those contributions. We look at the NPS, what's all the NPS? The annual appraisal is not taxable. NPS is more than 2,50,000. In this case, in case of NPS, on the individual contribution on the accretal, nothing is taxable. Employer's contribution, if it exceeds the 7,50,000 limit, which we will discuss a little later, then the accretal on that excess amount gets taxed. And that 7,50,000 limit is for all three contributions. One is to NPS, to Provident Fund, and to Superannuation Fund. All three employers' contributions aggregated. If it exceeds 7,50,000, then the accretal on that and the excess of that gets. We are not aware, though it's a long-term fund, you do get withdrawals for specified schemes. I mean, it's not for just withdraw and you can use it, but you do get withdrawals from the scheme also. Now, when there's a partial withdrawal which is happening, on the partial withdrawal, up to 25% of your individual's contribution, you can get it as exempt. Anything more than 25% of individual contribution gets taxed. Now, the words used are employee. So what happens when an individual like me who's not employed, but we are partners in the firm? So what happens in those cases when it's individuals who are contributing? I think they about it was more employee, and then it was added. So I think maybe an amendment can come in for this, but that was not the intention. On maturity, when you withdraw on maturity, the full amount is not taxable. 60% of the amount is not taxable. That's given in the Act itself. And 40% you have to compulsory take annuity policy, which again is not taxable. Of course, the annuity that you receive from that is taxable because it's an income on the investment that you made in annuities. That is taxable as it stands today. But the entire maturity of your NPS is not taxable. So if you look at it in that manner, when you're contributing, you get a deduction. Your accretals may not be taxed, of course, subject to if it exceeds the 7,50,000. And on maturity, it's not taxable at all. Whatever annuity you receive, of course, that is taxable. And that, like Mono spoke, there are several annuity policies which are there. You need to look at which annuity policy you wish to take. You could have annuity with return of capital. You could have annuity without return of capital. All of that has to be considered from a tax perspective. But if you look at this NPS scheme in that manner, it's quite good, because when you contribute, you get a deduction. Accretal is not taxed except for that employer part of it, and maturity not done. Compare this with a mutual fund. If you're investing in a mutual fund, and when you sell it off, or if it's closed on maturity, it becomes taxable. You get good returns in a fund or any investment for that matter if you hold for a long period. So we've seen schemes of mutual funds where you hold for a longer period of time and they've given very good returns. Shares also similarly hold and they're giving very good returns. But if you compare that with NPS returns have been very good right now. Of course, they give good returns. But on maturity, it's not taxable. While shares and mutual funds on sale will become taxable. So if you're in a particular age group, and yes, of course, you need to start early. There's no doubt about it. When you start your job, you start your pensions also. But even if you've not started early, in the middle age also, you can start joining. And imagine if you hold for, say, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, and then what you get on maturity may not be taxable. So this is also a very good incentive which government has given. Contribution tier 2 account by central government employees. This is only a benefit which they've given to central government employees, that if you contribute tier 2 account. So tier 1 account is where you get the tax advantages. Tier 2 account is like a normal mutual fund that you have. You don't get any other tax advantages of a tier 2 account. But here they have said that central government employees, if they contribute tier 2 and it's held for 3-year period, then that contribution also will be taken into account for 80C deduction. It is within the overall limit of 1,50,000. It doesn't exceed more than 1,50,000. So within the overall limit of 1,50,000, if you contribute, this is only a benefit to central government employees. Now we come to the changes which have come about in this budget, in the Finance Act of 2020. What they have done is, prior to this change, there were 3 things generally employers would give. One was superannuation, one was provident fund, and then you had the national pension scheme. Provident fund, as we all know, whatever is contributed is less than 12% is not taxable. Employer's contribution is not taxable. NPS, like we discussed earlier, whatever was contributed is taken as income, but then you get the whole deduction for it. And then you also had superannuation fund. So employer's contribution to superannuation fund in excess of 1,50,000 was taxable. Below 1,50,000 was not taxable. Now all three, and they said that all 3, if it exceeds 50,000, then that excess is taxable. You also need to keep in mind the inner limits of percentage of total salary. So with percentage of total salary, if it still exceeds 7,50,000, then that amount is going to be fully taxable. The excess amount is going to be taxable, not the 7,50,000, the amount in excess of 7,50,000. They also brought in another section, subsection 7A, to say that the accretal on this excess amount will also become taxable. So a lot of questions came up as to how do I know this accretal pertains to PF or does it pertain to superannuation or NPS? How do I take the first in first out? How do I work out what is taxable? So they have very well said we will prescribe a rule and it will be done in the manner in which it has been prescribed. So come April of this year and they have prescribed this rule. So if you go to the next slide, they have prescribed rule 3, which provides the manner in which you have to compute the accretal on the excess contribution made by the employers to all these 3 funds. So the next slide, please. And they've given a very good formula. I mean, they have really taken care of it. They've given a very good formula to say, how do I tax the accretal? Only problem was that they have actually gone to be very nearer to the whatever amount you receive, instead of keeping it as a perquisite. See, this is going to be a perquisite. They could have just prescribed a rate to say, okay, this rate you apply to the balance which is there, and that is it. That's the accretal amount. But they have not done it that manner. They have actually tried to arrive at the rate. So when you look at the rate which is to be arrived at, they have given a formula. If you can go to the next slide, please. Rule 3B. And this is a very detailed, but it's not difficult. So the taxable question, you look at your principal contribution and divide by 2. So principal contribution, whatever is being made to all 3 funds, you divide by 2 so that you iron out the fluctuating contributions if there are any during the year. into R, and R is the rate of return, which is the one which will be maybe difficult to calculate, plus whatever was your excess principal contribution in the earlier year, plus the excess perquisite of the earlier year, into the again the rate of R. So there's a formula which they prescribe, which can be done, and it's not something very difficult to do. Only thing is, when you're computing R, what you need to look at is your average. What is the average that you've received? Amount of income that you've received during the year that you have to divide by my opening and closing principal contributions. Now, as an employer, when I'm doing this, for this year, when I'm going to be doing it, it's coming to effect from the current year, when I'm going to be doing this for the year, I don't even know what the rate of interest can be. Sometimes there's going to be some estimations which will come in. I don't even know what my return on NPS is going to be. Should NPS, what is the return that I have to look at for NPS? Because NPS does not give me anything. There's only a valuation which changes. So what do I look at it then? How do I know what my closing balance is? In PF, yes, I can estimate more better because I have contributions. I know the rate of interest will be approximately so much. Estimations are better. They could have done this at a particular rate and it would have been much more easier to do it. But this is far closer to what my return will generally be. So this is a calculation that has to be done. The income earned upon the average of the opening and closing balances. And this will be taken into account for your perquisite valuation. So this is what the change has come about in the Finance Act 2020. And then we've just given certain illustrations of how the calculations have to be done. So we don't need to go through those illustrations. We can take questions on that separately. But I think the government has given good incentives. Tax incentives have been given for investment NPS. Considering the risk profile, investments can be done. And of course, those who are risk averse, like us who are risk averse, and we don't have the time to really manage our own portfolio, you can look at the auto portfolio which is there, or you can look at government securities. I mean, that's one very good thing which the NPS has. You can make investment in government securities, and returns which Mono spoke about are very good in government.
Ms. Beros, we can't hear you, Ms. Beros.
I think Akhilesh ji, her presentation is over.
Okay.
Ma'am, your
She's done.
presentation is over? I think the
Network had a problem. I'm through with my presentation, and we do presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the
Mr.
detailed
Akhilesh, can you hear
presentation
me?
on tax implications. Yes, I can hear you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your detailed presentation on tax implications as such. Now the floor is open for question and answers. I will ask my colleagues also to check on the YouTube if there are any questions out there, because this is being telecast on YouTube also, and most of the audience, is on the YouTube. So I'll just give me a couple of minutes. I'll just check with my colleagues if there are any questions as such right now. Rao Garu, you hear are there any questions, Rao Garu, on the YouTube? Can you hear me, Rao Garu? I believe we don't have any questions. I believe we don't have any questions as of now. But what we will do is we will write to the delegates, asking them if they have any doubts or any questions to address to any of the panelists, and then we will share those questions accordingly, and then probably give them a feedback also as such. So I think if any of the panelists have anything to add, then otherwise we can close the session, sir, with your permission.
Yeah, Akhilesh ji, I feel that if no questions are there, of course, if you get questions later on also, please send it across to us. We'll be happy
Definitely,
to answer
sir.
the questions.
We'll do that, sir. So on behalf of FICCI, FTCCI and PFRDA, I would like to thank our chief guest, Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay ji, Chairperson at PFRDA, to taking time out of the busy schedule and addressing the delegates today. Ms. Preeti Chandrasekhar, business partner, business leader, health and wealth, and fellow actuary, Mercer, to share details about the retirement benefits planning by joining NPS schemes. Mr. Pukon for sharing details of the schemes as such of Tier 1 and Tier 2 options that what the subscriber has, and Ms. Behrouz for sharing the tax implications. I would also like to thank Sri Devender Surana ji for giving insights on the importance of NPS, why the employers should subscribe to NPS for their employees as such. And Sri Bhaskar Reddy Garu, who represents the largest chamber in Telangana, the president of FTCCI, he also spoke about the benefits and the value add that it can provide to the employees. So on behalf of all of us, we thank the delegates and the panelists as such. And we will be happy to share the questions as and when they comes up. And like to thank once again for everybody. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Akhilesh ji. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.